Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Guiding Star Astrology. Once again, my husband has joined me here to talk about what is happening in the astral skies this week from an astrological, astronomical, and mythological, get my words out, perspective. So, thank you so much for joining us, Dave.
Well, it is my absolute pleasure to join you at any time, and welcome to everybody. I'm really looking forward to another conversation, and cheers.
Hmm. That's I love to hear you say cheers. That's very Australian of you. For those who don't know, my husband, who missed our video last week and maybe just joining us for the first time, Dave is the author of 11 books on stars and mythology. The link for his work will be in the description below. Dave was a graduate of West Point Military Academy and also an instructor of English and philosophy at West Point Military Academy. He's now a teacher of the modern ancient way, and he is Sifu at Street Defense Applied Wing Chun in the San Francisco Bay Area. So if you are interested in any of Dave's work as a writer, as an instructor, as a Sifu, then please check out his work in the description below. But we're here today to talk about the Aries equinox. Now, that's spring equinox in the northern hemisphere and autumn equinox in the southern hemisphere. This year it's occurring on the 21st of March, where I am in the world, Australia, and it's happening on the 20th of March in other parts of the world, like where you are, Dave. So happy astrological new year, everybody. Yeah, Dave, did you have anything you want to say before I launch into the astrology of this particular period?
No, I really enjoyed the way we did it last time, where you lay out some astrology and then, I don't even know what points you'll hit on, but they sure seem to really have good synergy last time. So I'm intrigued to hear what you're going to share.
Ah, well, be intrigued no longer. Here we go. So it is astrological new year, southern hemisphere, autumn equinox, spring in the northern hemisphere. And this, of course, occurs every year when the sun hits 0 degrees of Aries. Now, at that time in mundane astrology, you'll find a lot of mundane, that's world astrologers, will be casting an ingress chart because for usually some big city or maybe even an ingress chart of the equinox for a country. And this is because it's the ingress chart of the moment that the sun hits 0 degrees of Aries. It's always the most pivotal indicator of global and personal events for the coming months. And so it's widely used in, as I said, mundane world astrology, but also in financial astrology and weather astrology, to name a few specific astrological fields. But all in all, it is a time for doing deep ceremony for righteousness to prevail, I think, in the current spiritual warfare climate that we're currently in. It's also a time for celebrating what we do have, a time for gratitude, and a time for beauty. I don't know about you, Dave, but spring and autumn are my favorite seasons. Summer's also up there too. Don't have much time for winter, but it is so beautiful. The light, the angle of the light at spring and autumn is just exquisite.
It is all over the world. It was really wonderful to live in Australia for the last 3 years and see the angle of the light in the spring and the fall. You call it autumn. They don't even call it fall down there.
No.
Um, Through the gum trees in Australia. How beautiful. But
It's
those angles of the light throughout the year, we'll talk about that a little bit when I pull up some planetarium views for our
I can't
for
wait.
yeah.
It's certainly a time at the moment to connect with all that is. It's a very spiritual time, I feel, both solstices and equinoxes, because we live on an earth that is governed by the tropical astrology, the solstices and the equinoxes and their occurrence. Now, the Aries ingress, or the autumn spring equinox of 2026, is one of the most historically significant world charts or ingress charts for our century. And that applies no matter where on earth you are. So in mundane astrology, as I've said, the moment the sun hits 0 degrees of Aries, that marks the astrological new year And this chart, the chart of 2026 astrological new year, it's electrified by a very rare high stakes alignment on this point, 0 degrees of Aries, and that is the very recent Saturn-Neptune conjunction. This is the defining feature of this particular ingress chart for us all, no matter where we live, and that is the tight proximity of Saturn and Neptune at the beginning of Aries. These two planets, they officially conjoined just weeks prior to this ingress that happened on the 20th of February. Now, in this ingress chart, their presence at this 0 point suggests to us a massive collective reset. And this is exactly what we're seeing happening globally right now. So as we are, I believe, and I talked with Dave about this a little earlier this morning, but I believe we're at this mirror point of the Bronze Age collapse, and now we're at the mirror point and a rise up into the Bronze Age out of the Iron Age or Kali Yuga. It's not surprising that we may be seeing the advent of whole new empires emerging, and perhaps they're a reflection of the Bronze Age collapse and then perhaps emerging into a new structure. But Saturn-Neptune conjunction actually represents structure, borders, and reality. And Neptune in that conjunction, so Saturn represents those things, Neptune, and they're both, like I said, very close in conjunction with the sun at the 0 degrees Aries point right now. Neptune represents dreams and disillusion and the intangible. So together with the sun in the ingress chart of 2026 for the astrological new year, this represents a conjunction position that has not occurred since the collapse of the Bronze Age. And they signal the birth of a new social and political paradigm where the ideal, Neptune, must finally be given form, Saturn. That's the combination of the two. It's like a sobering up of our collective ideals and collective fantasies. And so we're also at this time entering into a new elemental era as well. The 2026 ingress also is a gateway for a major shift out of water earth energy, which we've been in for quite some time, and into fire air energy. That's because Pluto and the outer planets are the most influential in mundane world astrology, and we're talking about the effects upon the world of this ingress time. Pluto is established in Aquarius, which is an air sign. Uranus is preparing very soon in April to enter into Gemini, another air sign. Saturn and Neptune are both in the sign of Aries, which is a fire sign. So we've moved completely out of all the water earth energy and are right on the brink of moving into pure fire and air. And this movement suggests a transition away from the heavy stagnant problems of the early 2020s that we experienced and moving towards a more rapid fire period of innovation and technological leaps and assertive, perhaps even volatile social movements that might form now. So the key themes, just to summarize them, are 0 degrees of Aries, where the sun is. This is the Aries point. It highlights global visibility, and events that occur as a result of this new ingress chart are going to affect the masses very significantly. Saturn is in its fall in the sign of Aries, and Saturn struggles there. And so leadership may feel forced or may encounter rebellious friction because Saturn represents Capricornian hierarchical structural leadership, and it's in its fall. It's not a bad thing, I don't think, in some ways, even though they're making crazy decisions right now that affect us all. We also have the Uranus position in a sextile to Neptune and trining to Pluto. This is the minor grand trine, it's called. This is a harmonious aspect between the planets of revolution and spirit and power, fostering an energy upon the planet in the masses of an enlightened breakthrough, an overall protective angelic force guiding and guarding humanity through this crisis time. So the 2026 Aries, Aries ingress, which is Equinox, which is the beginning of the astrological year, is less of a gentle spring awakening this year. And it's more of a foundational eruption, I think. You know, with Saturn, Neptune conjunction sitting right on the doorstep of the zodiac world point here, the world is being asked to build a new reality out of the mist. It's a year of manifesting the impossible in many, many ways, but only through grit and discipline, Saturn energy, and a willingness to burn away the structures that no longer hold weight. That's my take on this moment. Of course, I would love to analyze the Aries ingress chart for us all, but it's very dependent on where we are located on the earth, how it will play out in our lives. So come and learn astrology with me, my friends, if you want to learn how to do that and understand where you are in the world, because obviously we don't have time to go through every city on the planet and how the Aries ingress chart's going to affect it. But Dave, I'm really keen to hear what you have to say about Equinox and the astrological new year and what you have gleaned about this fascinating topic.
Well, that was brilliant as always. I'm mesmerized. Um, I did choose some Aries related myths for us to take a look at, but let's actually look into the planetarium in order to maybe see what you're talking about as well. And I'm sure that all your viewers know a lot of this, but it'll make it really concrete if I can just share my screen here for one moment and bring up a planetarium. So here's where I thought we should start. So I have cast this chart now, and I have taken this screenshot from the location in California where I am in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I am looking at the sky from California and in the San Francisco Bay Area on the peninsula, the South Bay. And I've moved it forward to March the 20th in the local time at 7:26 a.m. So that's the hour of equinox here in the Pacific time zone will be 7:26 a.m. in California. And as you noted, it'll already be the 21st in Australia. California is one of the last places on the whole, before the international date line in the middle of the Pacific. So California lags almost everybody else, other than Hawaii, but and maybe a few more islands to the west. But so at 7 in the morning, this is the point of equinox, basically, is what I am depicting for us. So let me just orient. And if you watched last week's episode, some of these constellations will be familiar to you. Certainly, viewers familiar with astrology will know all the characteristics of the different zodiac signs, but may not really know what they look like in the heavens. So let me outline the constellations that make up those background constellations that the sun, moon, and planet goes through. That is the zodiac. And I'm sure your viewers know that, but here's what they look like. I started with, well, I'm sorry, let me first orient you to my planetarium here. I'm facing south because in the northern hemisphere, to see the zodiac and to see the course of the sun and moon and planets, we face to the south. In the southern hemisphere, to see the course of the sun, you face to the north. So in the center of the screen, I've put a small square around the letter S. That is due south. So I'm facing due south. And that means in this planetarium, basically the north celestial pole, because I'm in the northern hemisphere, is up high in the sky. In fact, it's not even straight up overhead, it's behind the back of my head. I'm facing south. If you shot a spear or an arrow up backwards, that's where we would see the north celestial pole here in the northern hemisphere. You've got to imagine yourself inside of a wraparound planetarium dome here. And the north celestial pole is actually at the top of the dome, but behind us because we're facing south. So I've circled the North Star way up there. And that, well, actually not the North Star, but the North Celestial Pole. And we do have here in the Northern Hemisphere, we have a convenient star right next to the North Pole, and that is Polaris. So Polaris is right up there next to the North Pole, and I'm going to indicate that on the.
Is that the Dipper?
Yes, very good. That
Oh,
is the
oh,
Little Dipper. That's not
right.
the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper is a little to the right. I didn't actually outline it. So this is the Little Dipper or Ursa Minor, the little bear. The Big Dipper, Ursa, is part of Ursa Major. The Big Bear, it's to the right of
Right.
the Little Dipper. And viewers familiar can probably pick it out.
Mm.
Because of the way this thing curves, the two pointer stars at the front of the Dipper, they point right to the handle of the Little Dipper where Polaris is. But Polaris is up there at the end of the Little Dipper. So I'm just
It's something we
orienting.
can't see from the southern hemisphere.
No, you
It's
can't.
fascinating.
Just as when we're down in Australia, the south celestial pole is high overhead. And if you look way down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see all the longitudinal or ascension lines coming together at the south celestial pole.
Mm.
That's actually high in the sky when you're standing in Australia.
Yes.
You don't feel upside down, but you're on the south part of the globe, and so the south celestial pole. It's like being inside of a Zeppelin. And I've got videos about my Zeppelin metaphor. I go into it in much greater detail in some of my online courses, but it's like being inside of a giant Zeppelin, like the Graf Zeppelin or those old airships of the 1920s and 30s.
The
Um,
Hindenburg.
yeah, the Hindenburg, except that, when
Yes,
this
we hope that doesn't.
sabotage. I suspect foul play with the Hindenburg. But anyway, I'm just orienting everybody to the cardinal directions is what I'm really trying to do here. So actually, here in California, the curvature of the Earth does not allow me to see the south celestial pole. I've drawn in the curvature of the Earth. This is from the Stellarium app. It's a free online app. So when I'm facing south, the app makes it curve around because basically it's like east and west are supposed to be to my left and right, but since they're on the screen, they've made it curve, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So off to the left when I'm facing south is the east, and off to the right when I'm facing south is the west. So I hope that helps everybody orient. We're facing due south, and it just so happens that the sun, as you can see, will just be cresting over the eastern horizon in California at the time of Equinox,
Oh,
7:26. You see, it's a sunrise here in California. Now, wherever you are on the planet, you'll be turned a little bit differently than California. So the sun will appear at a different height in the sky wherever you are, or it may
yes,
even
because it'll
happen at
be
night.
mid-morning in New York, so the sun will be quite high in the sky. It'll be middle of the night in Australia, so we won't even see any sun.
Exactly. So I'm going to define exactly what is going on with equinox. What does it actually mean? And to do that, I'm going to take away the ground again and pretend like we can see all the way down to the south celestial pole. And you'll see in the east, the sun is right on not just the horizon, but a specific line in the heavens
Mm.
that is the celestial equator. Okay, well, I also drew in, I'll draw in
Nice.
Pisces. So you keep saying it's at 0 degrees of Aries. Well,
Mm,
what does that mean? 0 degrees tropically, right?
that's
Am I,
right.
am I saying it right? So that's because over the centuries and even the millennia, the background of stars has been delayed so that Aries is actually behind Pisces. Aries is behind Pisces, and now Pisces, the sun is actually rising or is crossing the equinox point in Pisces as opposed to Aries. 2,200 years ago, it would have been still in Aries, but tropical, you're basically adjusting for precession. But in any case, where is the equinox? What is the equinox? I put a yellow arrow pointing right to the sun. The sun is it's when the sun is crossing what?
The equator.
The celestial equator, the 0 degree line. What does that mean, 0 degree line? This isn't 0 degrees of Aries. That's talking about the left and right lines. This is the 0 degrees in between the north celestial pole and the south celestial pole, and I'll show you what I mean. So This line here, that's 0 degrees. It's exactly equidistant between the North Celestial Pole that I showed with the Little Dipper and all the way down in the South Celestial Pole. 90 degrees up is or 90 degrees north, up for me, down for the Southern Hemisphere, is the very top of what the sky rotates around, and 90 degrees south. So these lines are degrees of elevation. And if you were standing or if you were lying down in the Arctic Circle facing straight up at the North Celestial Pole, you would see the North Pole straight up overhead,
Wouldn't that be
90
awesome to
degrees
do
up.
that?
And the whole sky would be rotating around that central point.
Mm.
Okay. Why am I going through all this? Because the sun's path actually takes it to the north of that 0 degree line for part of the year and to the south of that 0 degree line for part of the year. And when it's north of the 0 degree line, it's higher in the sky for people in the northern hemisphere, lower in the sky for people in the southern hemisphere. When it's south of that 0 degree line, it's going to be lower in the sky for the northern hemisphere and higher in the sky for the south.
Mm.
But twice a year, it's going to cross that 0 degree line on its way to the north once and on its way to the south once. So if you're in the northern hemisphere, you could allegorize it as climbing up that mountain, crossing upwards when it's going north.
Mm.
For people in the southern hemisphere, it's actually getting lower in the sky. It's climbing higher in the sky when it's going south for them. But let me just now, from now on, I'll speak in a northern hemisphere
Do that.
centric
It's much
way.
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As it goes above, it's climbing towards the summer solstice. As it goes down, it's descending. It's going down the mountain, down into the pit towards the southern solstice, the December solstice. It's getting colder. So this is the one of the two crossing points, and it's the crossing point where we go up. It's the renewal.
Mm.
We're coming out of the pit. We're coming out of the cold. We're coming out of the underworld. We're going up into the warmth. And the days, hours of daylight will now be longer. They've been shorter. Hours of darkness have been longer than hours of daylight. Now they will be hours of daylight longer than hours of darkness. Okay, most people do know this, but a lot of people don't know the moment of equinox is when the center of the sun's disk crosses that 0 degree line. It is not some magical moment when day and night are exactly equal, because it's not exactly equal on the equinox. Why? Because the sun is a disk. So the it gives a little more light, and also the Earth's atmosphere bends the light around. So on the equinox, you don't have exactly equal day and night. What you have is the center of the sun's disk crossing that on its way up. And then again, on the way back down, we'll have another equinox when it crosses exactly that 0 line.
Mm.
Now, if your viewers have a pretty good screen and pretty good resolution, they might be able to see those other. I've got a whole grid work of blue lines
Yeah.
back there to help, and I'm actually going to draw them in. Stellarium puts those in at 10 degrees. And if you actually look to the right and left, you'll see 10 degrees above 0, you've got a 10-degree line. I just drew it in.
Yeah.
Here's the 20-degree line, 30. How many of these are we going to get to before we get to 90? 90 is the exact pole. So
Square.
there's the 40-degree line I just brought in. Let's see, that was the 30. Sorry, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. There's no line for 90 because it's a point.
Yes. That makes
But
it so clear. Mm.
this will actually help when I bring in the zodiac now, because so the 0 degree line, when the sun is below that, it's going to be hours of darkness are longer, things are going to be colder, sun and everything is lower in the sky. But the sun and the zodiac, they don't follow the 0 degree line.
Mm.
Part of the year they're above, part of the year they're below. And this is because of the tilt and all the celestial mechanics that I won't go into. But to the left and up from Pisces, you can barely see the outline of Aries.
Aries.
It's Aries the ram right there. And then the next, so now going from left to right, we've got Aries, Pisces. So we're going backwards through the
Yes.
zodiac. Who would be in front of Pisces in our zodiac? That would, of course,
Water
be
bearer.
Aquarius. See
There
him?
he is
Look
running
at
with
him.
his water jar and spilling it everywhere.
And look at his head. He's got a diamond-shaped head. This influences the headgear of, priests who wear miters on their
Yes.
head, like bishops, but or bishops in chess. They've got that funny shaped head in a chess piece. That's because of
I thought that was
Aquarius.
actually Perseus as well.
Perseus, I think, he's got a tall peaked hat. We'll see
Yeah.
him later. That's
Okay.
why wizards wear tall peaked hats and have magic wands, I would argue. So a
Oh.
lot of headgear is celestial. A lot of ceremonial or symbolic headgear and garments come from the constellations. But what's interesting, the reason I pointed out the head of Aquarius is you can see that the two
Mm.
of the four stars of the head of Aquarius are right on that 0 degree line.
What are those stars' names?
Oh, I don't know
Not
actually. I
sure.
don't. I don't.
I'll
But
look into that.
I can click on them when we get. I'm going to do a
Yeah.
little bit of live stellarium in a second, and we'll click on them for you if you want. But also on the other side of the sky, Orion's belt, one of those stars is right on the 0 degree line as well. But continuing, so that's Aquarius. Then, of
Is it
course,
the middle star of Orion's belt? Sorry to interrupt.
the reason,
Alnilum.
yeah, the reason I said one of is because I can't remember. I think it's middle,
I'll
but
look it up later. But I'd be fascinated if it was Alnilum because I think I'm saying that right. Is in some ancient writings, it was believed that that was where the soul goes when it dies, to the middle star in the belt of Orion. But this is beside the point. I will let you
It could
continue
be.
on.
As your viewers can probably tell, I focus more on the constellations than the individual stars.
Yeah.
And because they are the ones, the constellations actually play most of the characters in the myths, I have found. But anyway, not to get too off track, before Aquarius in the zodiac, we know comes the goat of Capricorn, and there it is in the sky. These are the outlines, these are the actual shapes that the stars are arranged in. These are the outlining systems of HA Ray. I've mentioned that before. You can read about it, why it's so important in my books. Sagittarius, I'll just go through without too much more commentary, other than to say in between Sagittarius and Scorpio, you can see the gorgeous band of the Milky Way, which makes kind of a cross a cross band to the ecliptic plane and to the 0 degree line. It's more going over like a ring that's going overhead, the Milky Way itself. And that brightest part of the Milky Way is right there in between Sagittarius and Scorpio. Before Scorpio in the zodiac comes Libra. There
Libra.
it is, the scales. That's why it's called the scales. It looks like that. You can see Scorpio looks like a scorpion. Really, it plays a serpent and often a multi-headed serpent in a lot of myths as well. Before Libra, we find the large recumbent figure of the Virgin, Virgo, right there. And then the last one that can be seen on this screenshot, just departing out to the right side of the screen, is you can see most of Leo, the lion.
Mm.
So, so why did I draw this in with all those lines? So that your viewers can plainly see as we move through the year, the sun, moon, and planets, those constellations right there are the background stars for our sun, moon, and planets. But when the sun is down in Sagittarius and Scorpio, I say down as a northern hemisphere
Yes.
centric person, that means winter. The sun is traveling through Scorpio and Sagittarius in the winter solstice in the age of Aries. The sun is higher in the sky for the other half of the year. So the sun is now moving into the parts of the part of the year where the sun's path during the day will be higher, and at night the other half of the zodiac will be lower. That it's day and night they're going to be opposite. So all this to say that, as everybody probably knows, the ecliptic plane has an obliquity, is oblique to the
Mm.
0 degree line. The 0 degree line is basically the the obliquity of the Earth creates that because the poles are created by our spinning. We spin around the axis that goes through the poles, and so 90 degrees is our tilt, and the we're oblique to the path of the sun, moon, and planets. And of course, we could also draw in the path of the sun, moon, and planets. I'll do it in a broad brush because the
That's
planets are a little
right.
bit on either side.
Mm.
It's a wide belt, but that is called the ecliptic path. And you can see that it goes, basically through all of our constellations of the familiar constellations of the zodiac, plus one more, one very important one. We'll just point out that the one 13th sign of the zodiac, the ecliptic does go through the foot of Ophiuchus,
Mm.
who is both in the zodiac but also above the zodiac. Very important mythologically and located in between Sagittarius and Scorpio. And the ecliptic path does go through Ophiuchus as well, which makes Ophiuchus a mythologically extremely important constellation. Now, let me just point out the other planets and heavenly bodies that we can see, starting with the moon. You can barely see the moon because it's practically a new moon there on the 20th.
Yes, I think it's occurring on the 19th. So it's only one day, and
Mhm.
therefore not yet visible in the sky.
Very thin sliver. If it is visible, it'll be very thin. So
That has mundane astrology implications in and of itself,
I'm,
but I
yeah, I
won't
was
go
going to
into
say
that.
that that means that the moon is very close to the
Mm,
ecliptic. Sometimes the moon, that means the nodes. The nodes are basically where the moon crosses the ecliptic, if I'm not
that's, yeah.
mistaken. So there's where the moon is, right there in Pisces. So if you know someone who has a Pisces moon, you can tell them all kinds of astrological things. Um,
I know somebody with a Pisces moon.
let's continue. Then we have over here is Venus, and very bright. Below the horizon, I think, on the morning of the equinox for us here in California. But anyway, there's Venus. As you were saying, so that's Saturn. My ecliptic is kind of making it hard to see everything, but Saturn is very close to the sun, as you pointed out, and Neptune. I didn't point out Neptune. I'm just pointing out visible planets at this
Yes.
moment. Here we have Mars going through the vessel of the water bearer there, the big jug of Aquarius. Mars is trapped in the jar. In fact, there's a myth where Aries gets stuffed into a jar by two giants
Mm.
in Greek myths. Odes and Ephialtes are the names of these two giants that the god Mars or Aries fights, and they get the better of him and chain him up and put him inside of a bronze jar for I think 13 months, and he almost dies he's just starving and thirsty, and finally gets broken out. He's immortal, so I guess he wouldn't almost have died, but he
He wasn't
complaining,
in good
"I'm
shape. Yeah.
dying in here." Yeah. Anyway, he finally got out, and that has to do with Mars being in the jug of Aquarius. I've written about that a long
So,
time ago.
what do you think the implications of that myth might be in terms of the current situation with war on the planet? Do you think that has some relevance?
Well, it is hard to know if the
Everything can be
stars
hypothetical,
are
but
causing that. It's hard to know if the stars and planets are. I absolutely believe that the planets have influences on us.
yeah.
You've proven that to me beyond any doubt, but I also understand why they would. Um, so it's hard to know which drives the planets. Are the planets causing this, or are Kabbalistic slash occultic slash um, ancient societies that study this also timing their world event
Activities. Yeah. Yeah.
activities
Mm,
to what's going on.
yes.
So, yes, I would say probably both of those things are happening. They are trying to influence the outcome of what they're trying to engineer by giving it the best possible chance
Mm.
and looking at what the planets and stars are doing. I think the blood moon eclipse and the festival of Purim, Purim, however that's pronounced, from the book of Esther is also behind the timing of this, absolutely criminal and
Mm.
war of aggression that was just and stupid war of aggression that was launched on Iran. Criminal, horrific, and also stupid. It has absolutely no benefit for the American people. Um, so without
Or the
wanting to
people
soften it,
around.
or the people of the world, well, obviously not the people of Iran, but it appears to have been timed to some um, timelines of various occult groups
Very
or
much so.
Kabbalistic groups.
That being the
Just in
case,
passing, go ahead.
no, I'll let you finish.
Well, I was going to say in passing, the book of Esther and that whole story of, Esther and her uncle Mordecai, that's all a celestial story. This is not literal whatsoever. Esther means star. Mordecai, as I'm not the first to point out, is basically a version of the name Marduk. Marduk being a Babylonian god who's
Mm.
associated with Jupiter.
Jupiter.
So these are celestial stories. They're not literal historical stories. And
Mm.
I wasn't even really planning on going into that. That
No,
was a
and
bit
we
of a
don't need to, but it just strikes me as interesting that story that you told about the god of war being stuffed into a jar, incapable of functioning. And that's what we're
mm,
seeing in the sky. There is a version, a branch of astrology called visual astrology that functions on those themes, that does its astrological analysis based on what is actually visibly happening in the sky. It's not sidereal astrology, it's very different. And that's
mm.
what we're seeing here is Mars in the jar of Aquarius, exactly like the myth describes. And so I can't help wondering if this war will go nowhere and accomplish nothing because the god of war is stuffed in the jar, just like in the myth. That would be my visual astrology take on this, knowing now of the myth that you just told us. And I mean, we will have to wait and see what happens, whether that actually eventuates, but very interesting that that is
It
where
is. I
you
wasn't even planning on pointing. I just put these arrows in there, and I wasn't really even planning on talking about that story about Aries being
no,
stuffed in the jar. But for those interested, I do have a very long running blog. I haven't, blogs are are not as
it's not as popular anymore, but yours is
popular as they
brilliant.
used to be now that there's YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and all those things. But it goes back to 2011. It's totally searchable. So if people go to my starmythworld.com, Star Myths of the World,
The link's in the description.
starmythworld.com,
Mm.
yeah, you'll get to, there's a link there for blog, or you can just look up my last name in Google and probably find it. But anyway, there's where Mars is. Apologies for the long digression, but it was very interesting. I find your
That's my fault. Sorry.
mundane astrology fascinating. There's Mercury. So there's the visible planets other than Jupiter. Jupiter happens to be on the whole other side of the celestial sphere at the moment in Gemini, right? Well, at least
Visual Gemini. Yeah.
visibly
Tropical
Gemini.
Cancer, visual Gemini. Yeah.
And we showed that last week, so people can go back and look at that video. But that's where those heavenly bodies are. And so now what I'm going to do is actually just take a brief sojourn over to Stellarium, if everyone will bear with me, because I find this a very helpful way of showing what's going on. What does it mean crossing the celestial 0 degrees? And I'm going to move the sun throughout the year. I'm going to put the sun right on basically its highest point, and then I'm going to just move through the year. What do I mean by that? I'll show you. But you can see here we are. I've moved us back to February. So the sun has not yet quite crossed it's on its way up, but it has not quite yet crossed that 0 degree line. What
That's
I'm
where
going to do
Saturn's sitting, if anyone needs to know where that is.
yeah, I'll zoom in real quick.
Mm-hmm.
There's the sun, and you can see where's Mars? Mars is still way over here in Capricorn, so it's heading for the jar, but it's not in the jar. Mars is still in the head of the goat back there in February. But what I'll do, and there's the last new moon, basically, the previous
Which
new
was
moon.
the eclipse, was it?
Yes, that was it was heading for the eclipse.
Mm.
So the eclipse was right around the 28th when this whole,
Mm.
4-day war kicked off. I'm saying that sarcastically.
Sarcastically.
Um, uh, you know, it's horrific, but I won't keep harping on that. What I'll do is take away. So everyone, put on your seatbelts. I'm going to take away the Earth, and we'll be hanging over the South Celestial Pole again. You can see all the way down, all the way up. I'll zoom in a little bit. We'll still face to the south, but basically, I've put the sun pretty much right over the southern, right at noon, basically. It gets a little confusing because we did a annoying set the clocks back. So now noon is at 1 o'clock, but back then noon was at 12 o'clock. Anyway, what I'm going to do is just march us through the year one day at a time. And as I do that, you'll see the sun is moving through the background stars, right? It's heading for Pisces, it's heading for Aries. And if I just start to really move it, you'll see it's moving. Whoops, it just moved above the 0 degree line. We just crossed. Let me go back. No, I've moved us all the way up to April 4th, April 5th. If we go back to March 20th, you'll see the sun with Saturn right nearby crossing the 0 degree line. See that? So now it's heading to the upper part of the year. It's heading into the northern hemisphere's summer. It's going through Aries now. Now it's going through Taurus. It's heading all the way up towards summer solstice, which is going to happen
In
in
Gemini.
Gemini and then now into Cancer. See how, if you're familiar with the constellations, now it's going through Leo. You can see the moon every month is hurtling around. You
Yes.
can see the other planets are moving through the sky. Mercury and Venus always staying near the sun.
Yes, that Mercury just did a retrograde there by the looks, and
Mhm.
Venus.
So now we're down at the lowest part of the year. See that? We're basically December 28th. We just crossed basically the lowest point. So I find this to be helpful if no one's seen me do this
Wonderful.
before. It shows the sun's movement through the background zodiac constellations. And it helps us to understand, well, what's an equinox? Well, boom, there we just had one. That's the equinox going up. Then there's equinoxes going down. In fact, there's a story in the Bible I wrote, it's in the Old Testament. I wrote a long time ago about a general who's coming back from the wars, and his daughter runs out to meet him, and he has pledged to sacrifice the first person who comes to meet him, and it's his daughter. His joyful daughter comes out to meet him, and so he has to sacrifice her. And this is a horrible story. You almost never hear anyone preach on it. I wrote a whole
No
blog post
kidding.
about it. Yeah. But it's because, well, why is that? When the sun is going back down, he's coming down from these battles, this general, and he sees his daughter. She's a young woman, but she's still a virgin. Why does he sacrifice her? It's Virgo. We cross the equinox in Virgo, which is what the sun is actually doing right there in this part of the year. This is September. I've rolled it to September 30th. Let me go back to about September 21st. See the sun? It's
Hmm.
crossing the zero line, and you can see that's Virgo in the background.
Yep. So
And
that's visible
that's
Virgo,
like that.
tropical Libra, everybody. Mm.
But these crossing points appear to have sacrifice involved with them. There's a different story about the Greeks going down to the Trojan War, and Agamemnon angers the goddess Artemis. He does something like he was hunting a deer or something, and he says, "Well, if I get a really good deer, I'll sacrifice that deer to Artemis." And then he changes his mind. He says, "No, this deer is too good. I think I'll, roast it up or something." She gets angry, and uh, it, that may have been what he did wrong. I forget exactly. It had to do with a deer. She gets angry and says, "Okay, no wind for your ships to sail to Troy." He's got all the ships lined up. He's finally got all the Greeks together, ready to go down to Troy, and he angers the goddess, and she takes away the wind, and everyone's sitting there. The warriors are getting restless. They're getting angry. They're grumbling against Agamemnon. They're saying, I don't know about this whole expedition. Maybe we'll just go home. And he calls in a prophet or a seer or a holy man and he says, I've obviously angered one of the gods. Could you please figure out who and how to fix it? And the prophet says, oh, well, you've angered Artemis, and you'll have to sacrifice your daughter, Iphigenia, or Iphigenia, some people pronounce it. And there's a whole Greek tragedy written by, I think, Aeschylus, the ancient Athenian, called the Iphigenia or Iphigenia. And so Agamemnon ties his daughter to the um, altar and he's going to sacrifice her. He says, well, I guess she's got to die so we can all go to war. And then the goddess Artemis says, okay, Agamemnon, what a, you just keep making me angry. She causes the darkness to fall, and then she takes Iphigenia away to safety and makes her, actually turns her into, in some accounts, the goddess Hecate or Hecate, the goddess of night, in the land of the Taurians, Taurus, where she'll have two torches, but replaces after the darkness passes and light comes back, the lights come back on, and Iphigenia is gone, and there's a deer there on the altar instead for Agamemnon to sacrifice, and then they all can go off to the Trojan War. Does that sound like anything in the Bible? A sacrifice, and
Isaac,
then
yeah.
yes, but this is on the way down to Troy. Isaac, it's the sacrifice of Abraham by Abraham of Isaac, but it's on the way up the mountain. And instead of being replaced by a deer,
He gets a goat.
not quite.
Not
Close.
quite.
You
Capricorn?
got back to
No.
Sunday school. Sorry. You didn't pay enough attention.
It's
Nearby
a,
the goat in the
it's
sky. It's not
a sheep.
Capricorn. Aries, correct. A ram. So,
I'm thinking, if you don't mind me interrupting, my brain was going off in a tangent as usual, and I couldn't help but thinking you could tell from these stories when these myths were created by the fact that if they're talking about a sacrifice that was associated with solstice, and the solstice was occurring in Virgo visibly, well, obviously we are in the age of Pisces when that happens, right? Because
um,
so Pisces would be
these are equinox sacrifices. These are happening on the way down
that, oh,
in
they're
order.
the equinox, not solstice
Well, I think it's
sacrifices.
actually Age of Aries. Now, if I were a lawyer or a very meticulous scholar, I would say yes, it could have been created in the Age of Aries, or it could have been hijacked later and then by someone who understood the system and said, hey, let's make it for the Age of Aries to make it look older.
Mm,
That could also be.
yes,
Um, but yes, the sacrificing of a virgin, Virgo, which happens on the equinox on the way down,
yeah,
or of a ram, Aries, on the way up, are the background stars of the age of Aries.
that's
When the
that's what I'm trying
sun
to
is
say.
crossing
Thank
that
you.
zero line in the age of Aries, yes. So, no, great point. Hopefully, with all that background of planetarium, we didn't just lose any listeners with that. That gets into precession, and precession is
Complex, yeah.
yeah, it's not super complex, but it takes a little while to get your brain around it. And I do cover that in some of my courses, and I'm sure you cover it in your astrology academy, the Royal Stars. But so I thought, since you keep saying 0 degrees of Aries, I would actually delve into that particular myth of Abraham taking Isaac to be sacrificed up on Mount Moriah and show that this is celestial. So
Mm.
there are people who take this literally. It is not literal, it is celestial. And so I'm just going to show a few engravings of this scene. So here, for those listeners who don't know, this is a story, a foundational story in the Bible, in the Old Testament, in Genesis, where Abraham who, Abraham and his wife Sarah were unable to have children, and then they finally, in their old age, get the child of promise, Isaac. Actually, Abraham earlier, Sarah said, "Look, it looks like I can't have children. Why don't you take, my handmaiden or my maidservant, Hagar, and have a child with her?" And he has Ishmael, and then later Isaac. And then God says, "Okay, now that you've waited so long, you've finally gotten this miraculous child in your old age and Sarah's old age, Isaac. Now that he's, a young man, why don't you take him up to the top of the mountain and sacrifice him?"
It's mad, isn't it?
It's celestial. It is
Mm.
not literal,
Yeah.
but it's a horrific story. I mean,
Mm.
you can get the sense of horror just from these woodcuts. These are old woodcuts, but look, he's holding his son's head down, like, okay, here comes the sword. The He's holding Isaac's head down with one hand. Isaac's wrists are bound in front of him. He's got a pile of wood on the altar there, and he's gonna sacrifice. He says, "Well, if that's what I'm told to do, then that's what I'll do." And at the last moment, an angel or the angel of the Lord sails in and says, "Stop. Okay, Abraham, it was just a test. You passed. You were going to do it." And you can see in this woodcut, the angel is pointing over to a thicket. There's a thicket where a ram is caught by the horns in the thicket. It's a little dark, so I circle it. Can you see the ram down there in the thicket, caught by the horns? And so it's very similar to the Iphigenia story or Iphigenia from ancient Greece, where instead we're going to have a substitutionary sacrifice. Okay, Agamemnon, you were about to sacrifice Iphigenia. We don't want you to actually do that. Here's a deer instead. And there is a constellation in the sky I have shown next to Virgo that is a deer. Well,
Ugh.
here in the Abraham story, there is a constellation nearby. You might be able to guess what that is, who functions as the ram, Aries, caught in the thicket. We'll look at that in a minute. But look, I want to point out a few details of this artwork because this is a celestial story, and fascinatingly enough, as I've shown in many of my books and over the years, the artwork reflects celestial clues. So let me point out a few of them. Well, I'll show one more. Like these are horrible scenes. It's a horrible story,
And
but
they
I'm just
put
gonna.
stuff like this in children's books, like,
Oh yeah,
children's Bible stories books, and it's just
right.
awful.
Well, it's celestial and it's esoteric, so its meaning is not inherently obvious. But let me just point out a few details. In this other one, there is a ram also, but it's kind of like, where's Waldo? Where's the ram in this one?
Oh,
Over
it's
here.
hiding, and there's a
Yeah, he's caught
donkey.
in caught in the thicket. And yes, there is a donkey in the story. In the actual Bible text, they load up a donkey with the wood for the altar. You can see in the
So that's Taurus, isn't it? Like the
correct. You're giving away the
sorry.
my advanced student in the front row here.
Oh,
What
I
is
was
this?
always annoyed by that student in the front row. Shut up.
Why would a donkey be Taurus, Kesenya? That doesn't make any sense. But you're right. Okay, I've circled the ram. You're getting a little ahead of me.
Sorry, I'll be quiet.
I just want, no, it's okay. I'm joking around. I want the audience to know that we didn't rehearse this beforehand. So she
I
didn't.
think that's obvious.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is you're right. There is a donkey. What's a donkey doing there? Well, there is a donkey in the text, but it's interesting. I've made the circle around the donkey and the foot of Abraham because it's almost like he's standing on the donkey's back. Isn't that interesting?
Mm, mm,
See that? I mean,
mm.
it's in this woodcut, this engraving. Now, um, in both cases, we also only see that foot of Abraham, that particular foot on that side. In this case, the foot is like almost on the donkey, right? I'm just pointing things out here.
Mhm.
In this case, only one foot of Abraham is showing, and the other one is obscured. The artist has chosen artistic license not to show it in both cases. I'm just pointing this out. And interestingly, on the going back over to the left of your screen, It's almost like the foot of Isaac is is there. It's kind of almost like a crossed, like the 2 feet, but one is kind of crossed up a little bit. Just pointing this out. Interesting foot placement. It's
Mm.
important. You'll see why. In both cases, also, we have an angel who flies in to grasp or arrest the downward stroke of the sword. In one case, the sword is curved. In one case, the sword is straight. But in both cases, the angel's posture is very similar. Outstretched arm, um, wings arcing overhead. I just point out kind of the artistic similarities just for fun. Also, in both cases, we've got cloudy smoke arising. I didn't make any arrows or anything, but on the right-hand side of both of these woodcuts, you've got the smoke from the altar going up, right? Everyone with me? So let's see, what else do I want to point out? Well, let's go over to another one. Just point out one more. And this is that same scene. And actually, this is the woodcut illustration. It's from, as you point out, Kesenya, the children's Bible stories of 1800s. This is a children's book from the 1800s. There's Abraham about to sacrifice Isaac, and the angel, once again in the same angel posture, flies in, outstretched arm. The sword or dagger in this case is held on the other side of Abraham. But once again, look at what the artistic decisions. Here's your ram in the thicket. And what about the feet? Once again,
Mm,
only
I
that
see.
foot and then that foot. It's really interesting. Is there any significance to that? I don't know. Let's continue and see. So now I'm going to bring in the actual stars of the night sky. And these are the same constellations that we were just looking at, but I have taken the liberty of moving forward to noon so that we can get all the constellations up above the horizon. And as you see on the star chart, there's south again, straight ahead. And how do I know it's just about noon? The sun is, excuse me, clearly straight up over the south. That means noon in the northern hemisphere. So the constellations that were a little below the horizon, I've brought them up above the horizon so that I can make some connections to what we're seeing in these woodcuts and explain this myth to you. So remember, the sun is going up across the 0 degree line at the spring equinox for the northern hemisphere. We're heading
Yeah.
into days longer. So in this story, they're going up the mountain. They take a donkey with all the wood for the altar. Then they leave the donkey behind. They go up to the top, and there Abraham is going to sacrifice Isaac. But then at the last moment, the angel flies in, stops, and says, "Hey, look, there's a ram for a substitutionary sacrifice caught in the thicket." All right, let's look at the constellations. I'll start with Pisces again, just as before. The moon is still in Pisces. This is same day, just a few hours later.
It's Equinox that you're looking at
Yeah,
here.
same, 3:20. Yeah, I'm using 3:20 in California time, Pisces right
Perfect.
there. There's Aries again. Now we can see all of Aries. That's the ram or the lamb. Now this is the outline of Taurus. That's the H.A. Ray outline of Taurus. I actually outline Taurus myself a little bit different when I find it in the heavens. Doesn't matter. Bulls have long horns, and when I outline it, I show the long horns. When H.A. Ray outlines it, he shows the long horns. You can see the Taurus has long horns there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that important? You already said it. So
Because donkeys have long ears.
yes. So an ass or a donkey has long ears. Taurus, which is a bull, everybody knows Taurus is a bull, sometimes in myth plays a donkey or an ass with long ears. How do I know this for sure? Well, Samson uses the jawbone of an ass and he uses Taurus. So
Mm.
that's one indication. There's others from
Shows
Greek
up
myth.
time and again, doesn't it?
It shows up a lot.
Mm.
Okay. So remember, there was a woodcut where
Yeah, it was a donkey.
Abraham had it. Yeah, there was a donkey, but Abraham's foot was almost on top of the donkey. So
Yeah.
let's see if there is a constellation with a foot almost on top of the donkey. You already said it earlier. I didn't even, rehearse this or prompt you. You were saying, wait a minute, I thought that headgear came from Perseus.
Yes.
That is Perseus. So Perseus is not a zodiac constellation. As you can see, Perseus is located to the north in the sky, closer to the North Pole celestially than Taurus, above the zodiac for us here in the northern hemisphere, below for you in the
Mm.
south. And he has a peaked hat. He also has a long wand. Like it looks like he's holding out one arm with a long wand.
Yes.
So, and he's got like a robe. So when you see like, Mickey Mouse in what was that? The
Oh, the
Sorcerer's,
wizard, Sorcerer's
yeah,
Apprentice. Yeah.
he's got a long robe with stars and planets on it. He's got a peaked hat. He's got a magic wand, and he's causing all kinds of havoc. The outfit of a magi or the Pers the Persians or the magi are the Perses, the from Perseus.
Mm.
The magi dress like Perseus. There's a hat called a Phrygian hat that also comes from Perseus. It's like a peaked hat with long ear flaps, or even a liberty cap. If you look at the French Revolution, they
Oh,
wore these liberty
yes.
caps.
Mm.
Anyway, that's Perseus. So notice Perseus, one foot on top of Taurus. Where's the other foot? Almost not even visible, isn't it?
Looks like
Isn't
he's
that it?
skipping.
Yes. But
Do-do-do.
also twisted, the twisted foot. So there's myths with twisted feet. In fact, the word Oedipus means twisted feet. Hephaestus or Hephaestus, who rides on a
Yeah.
donkey,
Yeah.
has twisted feet. Um, Balaam in the Bible twists his feet against a wall.
That's
He's Perseus riding. He's riding on a donkey. Balaam in his ass. So this is in this particular myth, I would argue, from the presence of a ram and a donkey, we've got a Perseus figure, and that is actually, in this case, Abraham. Can you see the curved knife on the other side from the magic
absolutely.
wand? Yeah,
Mm.
that's the curved knife. You can see that in this woodcut from the 1800s, Abraham's got that knife over on that side, and the angel is flying in from this side with an outstretched arm. That is the beautiful constellation of Andromeda. Andromeda plays an angel. There's other constellations that play an angel, but Andromeda does often play an angel. And Andromeda usually looks like a woman falling backward.
Without a head.
Yeah, well, with her legs kind of splayed out in the same way that the legs of the angel figures, but also that upward arcing leg could be an upward kind of arcing angel wing,
Mm.
I
Okay.
have argued. This is definitely what's going on here. The angel is stopping Perseus from slaying Isaac. Where's Isaac in this picture? Well,
That's
he's
just.
right. He's basically right where the small leg of Perseus is. See,
Mm.
Perseus, one leg is visible and one leg is like the leg of Isaac. He's basically holding Isaac. He's gonna
Yeah, they look like one and the same
They
in
look
the
like they're
image.
part of one. That's what's
Yeah, yeah,
going on here.
yeah, yeah.
And he's going to be replaced by what? A ram. Where's the
Yes,
ram? Look straight
right
down.
underneath. Yeah.
Aries. And in fact, you've even got the Milky Way, that smoke from the altar. The Milky Way goes right into the
Yeah.
head of Perseus. You can see the Milky Way arcing across your screen. But I'm not finished. For anyone who still doubts the that this is the interpretation, we've got the smoke, we've got the angel, we've got Perseus, we've got the knife, we've got the donkey, we've got the substitutionary ram.
Sounds
What
like a
about
game
the,
of Cluedo. Sorry.
well, yes, with the lead pipe.
Yes,
The
the knife in the ballroom. Sorry, carry on. I'll be quiet.
For listeners not in Australia, she means the game of Clue, but for some reason in Australia they call it Cluedo. I don't know why. But look at the woodcut very closely of that ram. Do you see how the ram is caught in a thicket? Now let's look at that thicket. I'm gonna make the point out sorry, I was supposed to put these arrows in earlier. Bear with me. Twisted foot, or only one foot showing, curved knife, and Perseus. Actually, the myth of Perseus, he uses a knife that is, it's a special knife called a harpe sword that hooks just like that, the actual Perseus, when he cuts off the head of Medusa. But going back over, if you'll look at that ram, let me see if I can make the ram. Oh, there's the all my arrows. There's the long ears of the bull, which is the donkey. There's Andromeda, the wing of the angel. Let's make the oh, there's Aries, the substitute. I was supposed to bring all this in, sorry. But um, see how I'm making the ram flash a little bit? Look back over there. Look at what he's caught in, that ram. He's caught in kind of a V of a olive tree or something. Can you see
Oh
that?
yeah, I can. Yeah.
Let me just outline that for you.
Huh.
Does that look like any constellation that you know
A
of that's
little.
near Aries?
Mm-hmm.
Look over at Pisces. Like the thicket that the ram is caught in the branch of a thicket. It's caught in a forked branch
Amazing.
because Aries has his head going right towards Pisces. In the story, it says he's got his horns caught in the branches of a forked branch of a thicket. That is this story.
Amazing.
It is celestial. It is not literal. I believe that Kabbalistic, bad actors on the world stage who take this literally may be starting wars based on this kind of ancient myth that is not literal. But
Mm.
this is where it actually comes from in the sky. So I thought it would be appropriate to talk about
It is.
at the equinox. It's got Aries, and you didn't mention in any of the prelude, but you were mentioning there's some connections to one star in Pegasus. I guess the sun or Saturn might be lined up with one of the particular stars of Pegasus. So I just outlined Pegasus for you here.
Mm.
Pegasus appears to be springing out of the neck of Andromeda. So listeners who don't know why that is can go back and listen to our previous
Oh,
conversation from, I don't know how many years ago. We did a video about the whole Andromeda, Medusa,
alcohol. Mm.
Perseus, Algol story where
Mm.
we talk about that. No spoilers, but there's
Check it
Perseus,
out. It's so
and you can see
interesting.
why. Yeah, you can see why Perseus. Sorry, I said Perseus. There's Pegasus. You can see why this particular point on the celestial sphere, where the Sun and Saturn and Neptune are having this important, activity, is associated with Pegasus. If you take Pegasus and draw a line right down to the ecliptic, you'll see that a lot of the stars of Pegasus come right down to where we are right now.
Mm.
That all tie
Yeah, that's
together? Make
amazing.
sense?
So tell me, Dave, looking very sophisticated, like out of a shag painting there with your Manhattan. Um, Tell me, why do you think?
5:30 here.
Yeah,
So
I know. I know. I wish I was enjoying one with you. But why are these stories that are about equinox to do with a sacrifice and a atoning, if you like, or a replacement character?
it's a very good question. And once again, the answer is nobody knows. I'm confident to say I don't know because I can confidently say nobody knows. This ancient system is so ancient. It predates the earliest dynasties of ancient Egypt. I've done a whole video on the Narmer palette, you may remember, which is supposedly, the first king of the first dynasty of ancient Egypt, and
Mm,
they're already using this system.
yeah.
Well, that's supposedly the earliest civilization or one of the earliest. This system was already completely fleshed out, mature, and in use before the first king of the first dynasty of the first,
Yeah.
civilization that we know of. This is ancient.
But
So,
could it be like
so
the sun is being sacrificed, you know?
yeah, it's crossing. It's
Mm,
crossing. It's like it's
yeah.
crossing that 0 degrees. It's like, uh,
And in some, like depending on where you are in the world, at some equinoxes it's getting less. Like it's the
that's right.
dying,
Yes,
you
it's
know?
dying, and then
Yeah.
sometimes it's being reborn.
Yes.
And so this whole sacrifice of Isaac is very foundational to the Bible and to all these
Mm.
religions that take the Bible literally. Um, but it's a yes, it's a faith. Okay, you had enough faith, and the son did come back, and it's about dying and being reborn, and it's about um, metaphorically our reconnection with our deeper self that's been suppressed. It's about all these different, it's that's what I said earlier, it's esoteric. The meaning is not obvious. So we have to try and grasp at the meaning or deeply meditate on what the meaning could be. And I've done a lot of that in my books, but I have to say, nobody knows. Somebody who says, "Oh, I know this is what it is," and dup, 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 dup. Okay, right. You were around before the first dynasty of Egypt, and you talked to the people who designed this system. This system is profound. It is amazing. One thing I can say for sure, it's not literal, it's celestial, it's esoteric, it's metaphorical, and it is deep. It's about our spiritual journey. So that going down period, you would think, oh, that's the bad period. No, that's actually this earthly life. We're down in the lower realm. We're disconnected from our higher self, but we have access to our higher self. So reconnecting with who we really are is part of what it's teaching us. So it's got all these beautiful meanings, but the sacrifice, notice in the sacrifice of Iphigenia, she becomes a goddess. So she
Yeah.
doesn't really get sacrificed. She has an apotheosis, in other words, a becoming of divine. It's like reconnecting with who we really are
Mm.
is empowering. So Iphigenia becomes Hecate. She becomes this powerful goddess. That that's a hint of what's going on with these things. This is and she's on the downward. She's on
Yes,
the
I was just
coming
thinking
down.
that.
That's the Virgo.
Yeah.
Like you got to go down to
Mm.
become a goddess.
Mm.
You got to go down to the deep part and reconnect with the deepest parts. It's not all, rainbows and unicorns. It's going down, coming down into this life in a way, maybe. It's certainly coming down into this life is not just all fun and games and happiness and, you know, um, lots of money just showing up in our bank accounts without any hard work. Coming down
Damn
in
it.
this life is miserable and angry and um, struggle and misery and cold and hunger and disease and struggle and
So interesting to me.
right,
And
that's
I
how we
mentioned
become a goddess or a god. I mean, who knows what they're teaching us, but it's something deep like that.
it's amazing to me that the Bible, and this is a bit off topic, but I did mention it before when I was talking about the astrology. The Bible describes being formed in human form through the combination of water and earth, mud, create, we have that creation story. And that what we are going into now astrologically is this time of fire and air, which is the higher, not that they're
Right.
better signs in astrology. I'm not saying that, but it is a representation of spirit versus matter. And so we're emerging now into this heavily, not heavy, that's the wrong word, this highly spiritual period
Fiery.
astrologically, fire and air. At this equinox, this is sort of we're almost there. Once Uranus goes into Gemini, we're really kicking it with the high spirituality. But anyway, I digress yet again.
No, no, those are great. Those are great connections. I think what we can say for sure for all our viewers is these ancient myths are full of wisdom, they're profound, and they're also celestial. They are tied in with astrology and the influence of those
Mm.
gods, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, that actually do affect us, the sun, and they're tied in with, you know, we're connected to the universe and they're tied in with spiritual matters. They are not terrestrial ancient history. They are something much deeper and much more powerful and much more
Mm.
profound. And that is not the mainstream view. And the mainstream view is also that astrology is ridiculous and ancient superstition and blah, blah. There's no way that Mercury and Venus and the movements of Saturn and Neptune could possibly affect us, but they're wrong.
absolutely
The
right.
mainstream view is wrong. They don't want you to have access to this very powerful
Yeah.
wisdom, but this is powerful wisdom that was given to every culture of the earth in our ancient myths, whether
Yes.
you Greek or from the Celtic or Norse or Africa, all the different nations of the world, whether it's the
Exactly.
Americas, Australia, they all have myths that are based on the stars. This was given to them as a precious inheritance. Someone's trying to disconnect us from it, and
We want to
this
bring it back.
this is our inheritance.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is for us.
This
This
is
is for
exactly.
you.
Mm.
So if we
Well,
can say nothing else, we can say that.
absolutely. And on that topic, if you would like to connect with David and I in person, um, under the stars at Solstice, I guess we can announce here that we are
Great thing
participating.
to announce.
Yeah, participating in a solstice event at Serpent Mound in Ohio with the crew from Contact at the Cabin. So if you would like to join with us, Dave will be presenting there. I'll be there chatting with everybody. We can't wait. We're so excited about this
We'll
event.
make the
And
stars in the sky. We'll have star tours. There'll be
mm,
lectures. There'll be ice baths led by a master
breathwork.
Wim Hof instructor, Brandon Powell. There'll be the guys from the podcast Grimerica there. And it is appropriate to announce it now because here we are coming up to Equinox, and then this will be at the solstice. The Serpent Mound has alignments to
Mm.
the summer solstice. It also has alignments to the moon. It has amazing alignments. So
It's
there's a
very ancient, isn't it?
very
A lot
ancient.
of people don't know about it.
It's right here in North America. It's called the Great Serpent Mound sometimes. And there's a whole society called the Friends of Serpent Mound, and they have an event every solstice, every June solstice at the Serpent Mound. I've been to it before. I was there in 2017 with Graham Hancock, and he wrote about that particular solstice gathering in his book, Ancient America. Um,
He
so
did
this
do it.
is,
He included Serpent Mound in his first Netflix series, actually. He
that's
visited.
right. That's
Mm,
right.
mm.
So yeah, I was there in 2017 was the most recent time I was there. So it's almost 10 years. And we'll be going back this
Okay.
June solstice to see the alignment, the sun setting, and the head of the serpent points right to the setting sun on the June solstice only.
Mm,
So because we have a equinox twice a year. So ancient sites that are aligned with the equinox, like the some of the mounds in Ireland or in Malta, they will align twice a year when this
mm.
equinox is going
One way and the other
southward,
way.
when the equinox is going, but the solstice alignments will only happen once a year, and it just
Mm.
so happens that the head of the serpent is pointing towards the June solstice sunset, and that only happens once a year, and we'll be there. So
Ah,
join us if you can.
yeah, it's going to be wonderful. We can hear more of the amazing mythologies associated with this time when Dave presents at that stage. So come join us. The link will be in the description below, and I will probably put information across the bottom in a banner as well, so people should know that all about it. No excuses. Come and hang with us. But thank you
If you
once
can.
again, Dave, for this wonderful presentation at this very important time of year. It's been so lovely to sit and chat about this again, this wonderful in-depth stuff again with you. So thank you.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you. And thank you to your whole Guiding Star community for joining us. It was a great conversation.
We look forward to another one next week. Do continue to tune in with us as we discuss various mythologies and astronomies and astrologies to do with what is happening in the skies right now. You'll love this. You will, sorry, get my words out. You're going to love this series. So thanks, David, and we'll catch everybody next week. Bye.